two things that really popped out to me was the double haters in both those states. People who hate both parties were voting. I mean, which is crazy. Double haters never vote because, like, if you don't like Trump and you don't like Harris, then you don't like either party. They end up staying home.
Yeah.
They not only came out. I think back then it was about 12 or 13% of the electorate in those states. They were voting 8-2 for the Democrat in Virginia, Spanberger, or New Jersey's Mikey Sherrill, 8-2 for the Democrats. And that just said to me that and by the way, CNN, I think, just released a poll. Now that's a poll, not votes. These were actual votes in Virginia, New Jersey. That poll showed the discovery of double haters about a week ago. CNN discovered the double haters and was talking about how they were like, amazingly, 58% of double haters are voting in the poll, saying it generically they'd vote for the Democrat, 22% for the Republican, and 17% are undecided. If you actually think about that 17%, if they don't show, that 56 turns into 80, and if they do show, they break towards the same way. So no, I think that's been out there for quite a while. And I think you're now starting to see it because now as more polls come out in some of these states. And then the other thing that was clearly going on back then, and I've been talking about it for months, we've been talking about in this show, was there was a dramatic break with independents that started after Epstein. And I can't explain. The last place, because Epstein happened, it wasn't that Republicans bolted right away. Also, Democrats already 95-5 were against Trump. And so, it didn't, the Bondi saying, I'm not going to show you anything, it didn't change any of their minds. But you saw independents start to break, and the break has accelerated over time. And even back then in New Jersey and Virginia, 67% of independents were voting for the Democrat, or 70%, I think, in Virginia. That's not normal. Usually it's 53-47 voted for Trump, and 53-47 of independents voted for Biden, and back and forth. No, this is, and that, by the way, is no longer anywhere near where it's showing up in polls. Now, in some polls, independents are as low as 18%, 22% approval of Trump. It's a drag. And so those two things are pretty important to understand. And then on top of that, you get that clearly the energy advantage in terms of Democrats turning out in larger numbers and Republicans just not showing up in these specials in the midterm votes so far. And that's something we've seen before. So you see those three things. It's like the trifecta of not, I don't think, a blue wave. What I call it is a wave of change. I mean, because it's not just Democrats, a big, massive wave, but it's independents joining with Democrats and increasingly soft Republicans starting to move too. And so, where we have candidates like Sherrod Brown and John Ossoff wasn't even talking about Georgia being in play anymore because of these shifts. And in fact, I think, I was out in Iowa. I did a bunch of shows on the ground in Iowa, and you could tell. I mean, I think the fourth seat is going to be the Iowa Senate seat. I mean, there's a reason Joni Ernst did not run for re-election, and Hinson is in a dead heat with either of the two, Josh Turek or Zach Walz, two great candidates. They're fighting it out. They're going to have a tough primary, like we saw with Tallarico and Crockett in Texas. But the winner is going to be a formidable force, and I think win that seat, particularly because Rob Sand, who we talked about on this show, the governor candidate for in Iowa, is just running circles around the Republicans right now. And I think he's going to lead to more than just the Senate seat there, but 2 or 3, maybe even 4 House seats flip.
Yeah, and both of the Democratic contenders in Iowa within the margin of error against their opponent in the latest Iowa poll. Republicans just came out with this big $350 million nationwide Senate action plan last week. And that anticipated independents breaking much more evenly. Now we're seeing this latest Quinnipiac poll shows the net negative approval rating for Donald Trump of negative 43 among independents.
Yeah.
That's actually a point lower than Richard Nixon in his last poll in August 1974, where he was negative 42 with independents. I mean, how do Republicans strategize running a race with a president that unpopular with such a huge demographic?
Well, I think if you're Lisa Collins, Susan Collins, excuse me, or Lisa Murkowski, it might be time to actually talk about calling for him to resign or impeaching him, voting to impeach him, because that might be the way to save yourself. But otherwise, I think if you're up this year, some of them aren't, but if the Republicans that are up this year start looking for another job, because I think a lot of them, this reminds me of 1980, the other way. Carter, we had the Carter presidency that was under tremendous pressure, the misery index, inflation, oil shock, the Iran hostage situation, a lot of parallels to what we're seeing today, and the unpopularity of the president. And most people went to sleep that night, election night, thinking that there were 2 or 3 Democrats senators who were going to lose, went into that night thinking that. And when they woke up the next morning, 8 or so U.S. senators, 4 or 5 of which no one thought were in any kind of trouble, lost their, were kicked out of office. And we're talking about big names, giants in the Senate. I think that same thing's going to happen this cycle. I know everybody says, "Oh, bad math." No, I think, I think Iowa will be one of those places. You saw in the Florida poll, Vindman is actually in a dead heat in Florida, along with Jolly against Donald in the governor's race there. Like I said, I think we got a headline of the governor's race in Iowa that that race. I said a month or so ago when I interviewed Rob Sand that he was one of the strongest candidates I've seen coming up in the party. And it's all these things are combining. Jolly and Vindman are the two competitive governor and Senate candidate. Not sure either of them can overcome a lot of the sort of registration obstacles, but they're doing it right now. They're in a dead heat. And so even that one, I would not rule out that Vindman doesn't pull that one out. And that's before you get to a lot of other places like, we'll see if Texas, but Iowa for sure. But no, I think in my view, there'll be there's Republican senators who do not know they're in trouble right now, or just finding out and figuring it out. And I don't see a whole lot of ways for them to save themselves, given what's going on with the war in Iran. None of them have done anything to rein Trump in. They're not going to. And so I think, gas prices are going to increase. The same thing with fertilizer costs, tractor parts. I mean, farmers are in trouble, are hurting. That's what I saw out in Iowa. It was amazing to me when I was out there, Trump had collapsed to a -12 approval rating.